Welcome, everyone. This is the second series of webinars sponsored by the UPLB Chemical Society in, in cooperation with the Institute of Chemistry through the Elementa Project. I am Leilani Mercado, and I will be the moderator today. Now, this is a series of career orientation seminars for college students, chemistry and non-chemistry majors, fresh graduates, high school students exploring various career options in higher education, parents, professionals. It's for everybody. We invited alumni members from different sectors of the chemistry employment world to share with us their experiences. Today, we have two speakers from the academia and industry sectors. Now, we'd like to remind all the attendees that questions will be entertained after our two speakers are done. Meanwhile, you may type your questions in the question box. Now, our first speaker is Dr. Joey Santos. He is currently an associate professor of chemistry at Universiti Brunei Darussalam. He is a BS in chemistry graduate and a ChemSoc alumnus. Now, that is all that I could tell you now, as he will narrate to us his journey. Be inspired by my former colleague at the Institute of Chemistry, Dr. Joey Santos.
Right. Good morning, everyone. I am so happy to share with you today my journey as a chemist from the academe. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this webinar and the people behind the Elementa project. Special thanks to Lani, Glo, and Tessa, who contacted me from the very beginning. And for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Joey, and I am currently an associate professor of chemistry from the University Brunei Darussalam. I was from UPLB, batch 83, and I graduated in 1987, BS Chem. I joined ChemSoc in my sophomore year, 1984, and our batch is called Noble Gases. Okay, let me start by asking you a question. I assume that many of you here are chemistry students or chemistry graduates. And so the question is, was chemistry your first choice when you were deciding for your undergraduate course? There are only two possible answers, yes or no, and of course, both are correct answers. All right, ready? So for those of you who answered yes, these are probably some of the reasons why you intended chemistry in university. Maybe chemistry was your favorite subject and you always get high grades. Or your high school chemistry teacher was very good and he's so cool and you were so inspired by him or her. Or your mom or dad or both parents are chemists and you want to follow their footsteps. Or you admire someone who is a chemist and you want to be like him or her. Or you simply enjoy lab work. Or probably you want to start a chemical company in the future. So chemistry is your first choice. Now, if your answer is no, these are some of the possible reasons. You probably did not qualify for your first choice and chemistry was your second choice. You had no choice. Cheming is your first choice, but it's a quota course, and to make sure that you can go to cheming later on, so you did chemistry instead. And you probably joined ChemSoc and your life was never the same. And so you embraced it altogether. So you shifted to BS Chem after joining ChemSoc. Or your Chem 16 instructors persuaded you to shift to BS Chem. And maybe your scholarship restricted you to do chemistry instead of other courses. You know, throughout my career, I have encountered countless chemistry enthusiasts, and every time this issue of career choice is mentioned, many of us, particularly when we were in high school, were mainly concerned about studies when we were choosing our degree. Very few are extrapolating beyond life after graduation. We normally address that in our final year in the university by attending career talks or nowadays internet search, aka Google. We are so lucky now, because almost everything can be Googled, including career prospects for chemistry graduates. The internet is so rich with information regarding life after graduation. For instance, the American Chemical Society and the Royal Society of Chemistry provides helpful and comprehensive advice for careers in chemistry. If you Google, the most popular career paths for chemists are those in industry and academia. I will be sharing with you the academic pathway, and Gani will be sharing the industrial pathway later on. But of course, there are many other directions that chemists can be successful too. You can be a consultant expert, giving advice on chemistry, chemical processes, and chemical solutions to problems. You can also join the government in many ways. For instance, you can be an analyst or a researcher in a government laboratory. You can start your own company, maybe along the area of production of cosmetics and beauty products, food and nutrition, environmental monitoring, and so on. And because we have internet access, I am not going to talk about something that you can Google. All right? Instead, I will share with you my academic journey from UPLB to where I am now in Brunei. I hope to share useful insights, especially for those who are considering to enter the academic pathways. So this is the graphical abstract of my chemistry journey. It started from UPLB, then to Australia, to Ireland, to Japan, and finally to Brunei. And while you are fastening your seatbelt, I'd like to tell you something very important. Okay, I'd like to share the most important elements of rewarding career. I'm using the word rewarding instead of successful because we have many ways of measuring success. To some, the most successful is the one with highest salary or highest position or biggest investment and huge bank account, highest H index and citations, etc. But rewarding is something we measure individually, and we are our own judge. When we say our job is rewarding, nobody can challenge that. Anyway, this is based on my personal experience and not something from Google. So I should add according to Joey. All right. So the first one is qualification. This is probably the core of any career hunting, and we should be qualified for the job. This includes educational background, primary, secondary, college, university, bachelor's, master's, Ph.D., M.D., and all other Ds. And work experience should consider from the very first post to the latest. Then we have output. In academia, there are publications, patents, H-index, citations, academic awards, etc. And the right qualification leads to the right job at the right time. The second is inspiration. These are animate or inanimate entities that gives us the motivation and reason to do things, to perform and deliver. It makes us flexible as well. Inspiration could be someone very dear to us, a family member, spouse, children, parents, siblings, relatives, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, best friend, and so on. Or it could be our social advocacy or our passion or conviction. The key point is we derive inspiration from them, so we have a constant supply of motivation. When you are inspired, there is no situation too hard, no burden too heavy, no problem too big, no mountain too tall, no storm too dark. Just like what's in the song, He Will Carry You. Now, you will find that my journey is so full of myself. So I'm setting aside modesty for the time being so you can see the whole picture. I'd like you to see how my qualifications and my inspirations play complementary roles in my chemistry journey. So let's begin. So as I said, my chemistry career started at UPLB. But to give you some background, I was actually a transfer student from Luzonian University in Lucena City because I am from Quezon Province. My family was very poor. I couldn't afford to go to college unless it's free. During the time, the Philippine government was offering some form of financial assistance to poor but deserving students like myself in a form of a loan. The program was called Study Now, Pay Later Plan. To get into the program, there were conditions, and those conditions led me to do BS Agriculture. Now, one of the subjects required in agriculture is chemistry, and I really enjoyed it, particularly because I understood every topic that was introduced to us and always get the highest grades during exams. Halfway through the year, my classmates and I decided to transfer to UPLB, which is known to have higher standards of education, and of course, we believed that we had better chance of getting employed after graduation. When I filled in the application form, I saw BS Chemistry as one of the courses being offered. Then I realized that pursuing chemistry will make me really happy, so I chose chemistry. And for me, that was one of my best decisions because I really enjoyed studying chemistry. So when I shifted from agriculture to chemistry, passion was my inspiration at the time. I had no idea what to do after graduation. My ultimate goal was to finish my studies, get employed, and alleviate my family from poverty. As to the details of my career plan, I had no idea. Anyway, I have managed to finish my degree in 4 years, and right after my graduation, I was hired as an instructor at the Institute of Chemistry. I never planned to join the academe. It's just there was a vacant teaching post, and as a fresh graduate, I should take every opportunity of getting employed quickly. I remember Lani, she was Lani Ramos at the time. She encouraged me to apply, and I followed her advice. So I sent my application and got the job. My first year of teaching was really enjoyable, and I discovered that teaching in university is my calling. All right, after my graduation, I took the chemistry board examination, which is compulsory if we want to practice chemistry in the Philippines. I was not expecting too much because I did not enroll in a review school, so I only relied on my own preparations. But it was really a pleasant surprise when the results are released. I was one of the top notchers. I was number 5 and first from UPLB. Excuse me. This was the first addition to my qualifications. Of course, I was happy being number 5, but I was happier when I saw my mom being so proud of me and happy for me. Talk about real inspiration. Yes, my mom was my very first inspiration in my chemistry journey. If you are my friend in Facebook, you have probably seen this post, which I did during the 2017 graduation at UPLB. And I would say, without her, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Okay, moving on. In 1991, I did my PhD under government scholarship. I specialized in electrochemistry at La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia. I didn't do any master's degree. I was fortunate to be qualified for the straight PhD program. In 1995, I finished my PhD work and formally awarded the doctorate degree in 1996. I did my PhD for 4 years. And I have additional qualifications and inspirations during my PhD days. During the time, I got married and I started a family. Two of my children were actually born in Australia, and they are the best inspiration I had during PhD days. And also, while in Australia, I was featured twice in a university newsletter as a result of my work, of my PhD work. This article, which says Important Theory Revised in Chemistry, is the first one, and that is me doing the experiment. And this is the other one. I received a medal from my participation in a chemistry conference. Now, after obtaining my PhD, I returned back to UPLB and eventually promoted to the rank of assistant professor. And then I realized that my life was not only about myself and my career, but more importantly, also about my family. From that time on, I would always consider my family as my first priority, and I made sure that they don't compete but complement with my career. I did my first postdoc in 1987. I was in Dublin City University in Ireland for more than 1 year doing biosensor work. I was also testing the water regarding life in Europe, so I did not bring my family with me. When I realized that many factors were not favorable for my family to live there, I decided not to stay longer, so I went back to the Philippines. Although short, it was a very productive time for my career. It was during this time when I was admitted to the Royal Society of Chemistry in the UK as a chartered chemist. That means my qualification as a professional chemist is recognized internationally. And when I came back to UPLB, I won another award from the National Academy of Science and Technology, or NAST, as the first prize winner of the 1999 Philippine Talent Search for Young Scientists Award. And this is additional qualification. All right, in 2001, I had to make a very difficult decision to stay in UPLB or go elsewhere. Despite having promoted to higher position, you see, I am already an assistant professor. My combined savings and future financial prospects were not enough to provide for my family's basic needs, such as buying our own house, saving for my children's college education, and so on. That time, I painfully accepted an offer to work for a Japanese government laboratory called National Institute for Advanced Industrial Science and Technology in Tsukuba. It was a full-time laboratory work and did not involve any teaching. This is where I developed my expertise in slab optical waveguide spectroscopy and electrochemistry. And so I was in UPLB from 1987 to 2001. While in Japan, I was featured in a Filipino magazine called Philippines Today, where I was interviewed regarding my life and, of course, my chemistry career. This is my inspiration in a narrative form. And also, while in Japan, I saw an advertisement regarding a vacant teaching post in chemistry in Brunei. So it was where I was in Japan when I saw this advertisement in chemistry in Brunei. I never heard of that country before. It was a very interesting. It was very interesting because the qualifications they were looking for exactly matched with my teaching and research experience. My job application in Brunei was a very pleasant experience. And when I was shortlisted, they invited me for interview in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. It was an all expense paid trip covering my hotel and plane ticket. And after the interview, I was formally offered the job, which I accepted. I started as a lecturer, then later promoted to higher positions such as senior lecturer, assistant professor, and currently I am an associate professor. For me, work in Brunei is the best in my entire career, so I stayed from 2004 until now. So in total and counting, I've been in Brunei for 16 years. And aside from normal teaching and research activities, I have been given administrative responsibilities as well. Right now, I am the Director of Studies under the Office of Vice President for Academic Affairs. Previously, I was Director of Research, Deputy Director of Planning and Development, Deputy Dean of Science, Department Head or Program Leader as we call it here, and also I was Head of Teaching and Learning Center. Now, while in Brunei, I also collected additional qualifications. Sometime in 2004, I was granted the Chartered Scientist designation by the Science Council of the United Kingdom. And I was awarded the Teaching Excellence Award for the Sciences in 2012, and it was very delightful because the award comes with $3,000 cash. In 2017, I was also awarded the Outstanding Teacher Award by the Brunei Filipino Educators Club, recognizing my contribution as a Filipino academic in Brunei. And if you browse through bookstores in Brunei, you will also find this book called Filipinos in Brunei, where my career in chemistry is also shared. Now, for scientists, especially those in the academe, probably one of the most important qualifications associated with them are the publications and citations. And they are reflected in many profiles such as Scopus, Web of Science, Google Scholar, and so on. So just to give you an idea, this is my Google Scholar profile. And this is an evolving information that develops as I continue to pursue my career as a chemist. The important figures here are the numbers of publications, citations, and of course the H index. So far, my H index is 19. So that is basically my journey from UPLB to Brunei. And I hope you get the complementing roles of qualifications and inspirations as I move from one destination to another. Now, at this point, I'd like to give you some practical tips for those who are planning to enter the academic world. All right. First, you must be persuaded that it is your calling. Your qualifications and inspirations are telling you that university is a happy place to go. You should feel it in your heart. Number two, learn about the academic system. Find out how to get in, and once inside, how to get promoted. How are you going to be evaluated? And are you expected to just teach, or you are required to do research as well and publish? What is that thing they call research group? And where do you get the money to fund your research? The system vary depending on the university or institution. So you have to find out. So learn about the academic system. Third, try to find a good mentor. You know, the academic world is filled with bright and successful people who are willing to help young scholars to have a good start. Try to find someone who can advise, guide, and give you encouragement when you start your academic path. I had Dr. Baril, Charlie Baril, right after joining UPLB. And he was giving me advice even when I was already in Ireland, Japan, and in Brunei. Until now, he is still mentoring me in some life issues. Number four, keep skills and knowledge fresh and current. Learn continuously. Never stop learning new skills. Always upgrade your qualifications. Explore the ever expanding computer programs and apps, particularly those that are free and open source. For example, learn how to use Mendeley, ChemSketch, and so on. Learn about the new skill sets in Education 4, which is the academic part of the Industrial Revolution 4. Number five, develop and sustain meaningful professional relationships. There are many ways that your peers and colleagues can help your career progression. They can be collaborators, or they can actually provide letters of recommendation for your next job, and so on. So just be nice with everyone you encounter, and you will benefit a lot from your kindness. And finally, work, get inspired, repeat. You know, smart ideas do not emerge from pure inspiration. We need to work, and I mean hard work. The surest way to get your paper accepted for publication in Nature or Science is hard work. Okay, so I'd like to close with this quote from Confucius: choose a job you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. That was a very inspiring presentation. I'm sure you have generated a lot of thoughts and questions among the attendees. Now, Joey will answer the questions after our second speaker. For now, you may type in your questions in the question box. Our second speaker today is another ChemSoc alumnus, Dr. Isagani Padolina. Gani comes from a family of academicians. His father was my teacher in organic chemistry. I passed. And I took the two general chemistry classes with his mother. But here is Gani. He took the industry route. Gani earned his Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from UPLB, and then he went on to the University of Texas at Austin for his PhD in botany and phytochemistry. He stayed a while in the United States after graduation in 2003 and worked at Pfizer and Wyeth. That's where he held various leadership roles in research and development divisions. He then decided to go back to the Philippines in 2011 to join Pascual Pharma, and he has been there ever since. He is currently the head of research and development, quality assurance, and business development. Here today to share his career journey in the chemical industry sector, please welcome my former student, Dr. Isagani Padolina.
Thank you, Lani. Thank you for that introduction. Um, it's a pleasure to fellowship with my fellow alumni from chemistry and also from ChemSoc. I'm going to share my slides. Can everybody see? I'm going to try to do this live for the next 20 minutes. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to the organizers and also to the attendees. Thank you for spending your Saturday, your valuable Saturday morning with us. It's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to thank the organizers, Tessa, Rey, Lani, and Glo, for this invitation. I'm excited to chat with you guys today, right? So the title of my talk is Structure and Function and how it plays a role in organizational leadership, right? And this is not an original thought. Actually, this thesis came from a conversation that I've had with another ChemSoc alumni, and her name is Maureen Ruhi. She was the editor-in-chief of Chemical Engineering News, which is the flagship magazine of the flagship publication of the American Chemical Society. So she rose from the ranks and became the editor-in-chief. And one day we were just chatting and we were looking at different leaderships in different US universities, and we realized that there were a lot of chemistry, a lot of chemists, right, in leadership roles. At that time, I was at the University of Texas, and the university president at that time was Dr. Larry Faulkner. Same field, leader in the field that Dr. Joey Santos was in electroanalytical chemistry. And so we chatted about it, right? And we started looking at, what makes a chemist prepared for these roles. And you can see some of the examples here. You've got Esther Garcia, who's the UE president. You got Fred Pascual, the most recent UP president. You got my parents, who went from academia into administrative roles. And we got Asunta Cuyageng in Ateneo, Pataling Hug in LaSalle, Dr. Dairit, who is now in the Ateneo Board of Trustees. You've got Gisela Concepcion, Vice President at UP. Two UST Vice Rectors, Dr. Sison and Dr. Nonato. DOST Undersecretary Ami Guevara. Antonio Samson, Father Antonio Samson of Ateneo de Davao. Richard Abendan, who heads up one of the biggest efforts of USAID for science and technology research and innovation here in the Philippines. And helping him out is Dr. Al Serafica, who is a medical device entrepreneur and a balik scientist. So you can see that a lot of these guys, a lot of these folks really who have chemistry backgrounds have been successful in terms of leadership in their field, right? So these are just some of the local examples. You can see a lot of international examples. I mean, the Catholic Pope is a chemist by training, right? So today I'm going to talk about just a bit about my personal background. And also I'm going to talk about those principles that I use as a technical and philosophical guide. We were just having a conversation about this at the waiting room before we all signed up, right? So Lani already gave you a background of what I'm trying to do. So really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to suck less and less every day. You know, I suck, right? We all suck. But I'm just trying to be less sucky. That's all that I'm trying to do. And there's really no magic bullet, no monopoly on the approach. And I'll show you some of the eclectic examples in terms of career, my different friends who are also alumni of UP. So the journey really is about, you know, the experience and the different mentors and role models that you encounter all along. And like Joey said, we're in the same wavelength, right? 274 nanometers, same wavelength. If you nerds are out there, you can get that joke. But anyway, it's not really about being successful, but being rewarded, being happy. And that's it really depends on you. You know, it really makes you happy. We all have different needs, right? We balance, and at different stages of our career and of our lives, we're balancing different needs. We're balancing the needs of our family. We're balancing our own personal needs, work needs, the needs of our country, the needs of our community, and whatever community we participate in. So you're all just trying to do that, right? And you're all just basically trying to balance those reactions, right? And if your mind is stoichiometrically aligned, then you can start to figure out, you know, if I want my energy to go this way, I'm gonna balance it this way. If I want my energy to go this way, I'm gonna balance it this way. So those are this is a good segue to kind of the different principles that I'm gonna go over that helps me a lot, you know, with my career, and hopefully it inspires you to take chemistry as a career too, and as a course. So basically my pivot point, you know, my parents were in the academe. I was interested in it, but I was more interested in the applications part. So there was a point in my life where I was trying to decide whether I would take an MBA or go to grad school, right? And after a few talks with my tatay and also just doing research, you know, we figured out that, you know, a good chemist can be a good businessman, but a good businessman can never be a good chemist. So if I'm going to try to manage something technical, it's better that I know what I'm trying to manage, right? So that's when I decided to go for my Ph.D. I call it my Pizza Hut delivery, right? Ph.D. All right. So let me go through a couple of mindsets that I thought would inspire you and that I use as guidance, you know, when I go through different stages or different methods in managing my life and my career. You know, the first one is the periodic table. I mean, it's an amazing evidence of how the elements in our world is organized, right? So the elements are basically, so these are your elements, you know, that exist that we've discovered. And they're basically arranged in increasing number of atomic number, which is basically the number of protons, right? And periodically, which is the horizontal rows, you know, those are the periods. Those are same elements with the same electron ground state energy level, right? And as you move from left to right, you become more non-metallic. So you start with a more metallic property and more non-metallic, right? And you've got the vertical, I should say vertical rows. They're called vertical columns, right? The vertical columns basically are what we call group, right? It's the same number of electrons in their valence shell, and they will have similar properties, right? One of the things that this allows your mind to look at is the predictability of things. Like, for example, osmium. You know, I don't encounter that, or hasmium. If I was going to predict the property of that, I would look at that column, right? And look at, oh, iron. That's a pretty dense metal, right? So osmium would probably have the same property, right? You can look at trends, electronegativity, reactivity. It's basically a baseline that you can use for behavior. And if your mind is trained this way, you can look at different organizations, you can look at different people, you can organize them in a way that's similar to this, right? You can look at their predictability in terms of behavior, right? If this is from the same school or same group or same whatever, right? You can use that organizational mindset, right? Another one is structure and function mindset. So when you're trying to manage a team, or when you're trying to form a team, or when you're trying to lead a team, right? You're looking at the function that you want. So for example, if I want the function that this team needs to be in the lab and they need to figure out this type of experiment, that's a function, right? You from your training as a chemist, you know that a certain structure has a certain function, right? Just as an example here, if you look at the different amino acids, different amino acids, and the R group is basically representing different functional groups, right? um, I won't even get into the pKa stuff because that has like deeper applications, right? When you look at amino acids and you combine them to make a polymer, you get a peptide. That's a secondary structure. And then you get a protein, that's a tertiary structure, right? And then you get into applications like ELISA, right? Which combines different types of proteins to detect antibodies, right? That kind of mindset helps you prepare um, your energy on how to relate a function to structure, right? So I'm trying to look at my phone, trying to be cognizant of the time, right? Another one is imagining the possibilities. This is organic chemistry, right? It's got multiple mechanisms, source to sink, SN1, SN2, E1, E2, free radical reactions, right? Got multiple reagents, that you can apply to one starting material, multiple reaction products. It trains your mind not to think in a binary manner. Not everything in this world, actually, most of the things in this world are gray, not like yes or no or zero or one, right? And organic chemistry tries to teach that to you, right? And unfortunately, I didn't take my dad's organic chemistry class, but in my father's organic chemistry class, the exams are right minus wrong. And I've heard some stories from my friends. It makes it an interesting um, study style, right? When you're looking at different um, um, reactions, but it kind of forces you to not fool around too much, right? With what those possibilities are. So some of the previous mindsets that I've talked about kind of trains your mind to look at some of these possibilities that are okay to go to, right? But definitely it allows you to look at the world that it's not binary. Another one is a catalytic and energy mindset. And a lot of the things that I've noticed that gets missed is the energy, just being astute with the energy of your organization, right? So this is a basic uh, uh, reaction energy diagram from your reactants to products, right? So this shows that the product is more stable than the reactants. So it just proceeds. It proceeds towards better stability, right? Lower energy. That's where you want to go, right? And the laws of thermodynamics doesn't just apply to these reactions, right? It applies to our world philosophically, right? There's only a certain amount of energy that you're given in a day. So when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something. You can't do everything, right? So you got to prioritize, right? There's Unless you don't like the first law, you go to talk to our senators and they can repeal it, right? But you can't, right? So, and it also shows you, there's certain activation energy to make things proceed. So your job as a leader or as a person or as an individual leader in a group, right, is to lower that energy so it can proceed to the next step. So you can go from A and B. You have to find smoother pathways. You have to de-escalate conflict, right? Lower that energy, be a catalyst, right? And that kind of mindset allows you to be more aware of where the energy is at, right? And where the obstacles are so you can remove them. So where the tools are so you can give it to people so they can do their job, right? It's just a fascinating approach, right? When you're trying to look at an organization, right? So what does that mean for me, right? So one of my roles in Pascual Pharma is managing the research and development division, right? And so we don't have a lot of resources, right? This is kind of a complicated slide, but let me walk you through it. The left slide kind of shows, the left part of the slide kind of shows you the different collaborators that we have. It's the Lung Center of the Philippines, UP, TIP, Ateneo de Manila, and UrbanX, right? And the bottom part, the foundation, kind of shows you our funding agencies. So we get funding from PCHRD, from CHED, from USAID, right? So we apply for competitive grants, right? And the top part kind of shows you the different country priorities that we're trying to participate in, because some of these grants apply to those country priorities. And this timeline kind of shows you the value chain of how we're trying to integrate it into one of our bigger products, which is Relief. It's Sambong, which is our top product. It's a herbal medicine prescribed for kidney stone treatment, right? So it goes. So we have these projects from farm-based QA testing technology. You know, I collaborate with Erwin Enriquez, who is also a UPLB alumni, who now is in Ateneo, right? He wears a blue jacket, but his brief is maroon, right? So we've gotten very good beta testing on some of the farm-based QA testing technology that we've worked in, funded by USAID Stride. Then we try to get some process improvements and develop in silico and in vitro screening for some of our herbal products. And I link it up and integrate it into our internal objectives, right? We want to generate the next generation Relief, or the next generation platform, in making sure our herbal medicines are standardized properly. So having a chemistry mindset, organization-wise, energy-wise, structure and function, helps me integrate a lot of these things and helps me organize them day to day, right? And here's just a selection, right, of UPLB chemistry alumni and their careers. This is done because I know them, and by random, I didn't mean to omit people. Just know that there's 100 more out there with fascinating and excellent career choices. Not just these guys. So you got Joey Santos, you just heard from him, Roy Herona, Diana Aga, they're in UCSF and SUNY in New York. Noel Bautista, he's a country lead for Novozymes. Rodora Del Rosario, she's an MD now. Chemistry was her bachelor's degree, and she's now the CEO of HealthServe. Arnold Sena, one of my very good friends, he's a metals operations head in San Miguel Yamamura for packaging. We've got David Javier and Wawi Ebron, who are both in R&D. One is in Pharma in Roche. One is in the Department of Defense in the United States. You've got lovebirds, you know, people who have formed their relationships, very reactive during their college years and have never separated, right? Like Ramil and Lani Mercado. Ramil is a materials scientist. Lani Mercado, mayor of Bacoor. She's not the mayor. That's Lani Mercado Revilla, right? You saw Lani. She was the one who introduced us today. She's a professor at Navarro College, right, in Texas. We got Raul and Tessa Estrella, QA in manufacturing, supply chain. Tessa is supply chain for Nestle and now in Moment Group. You know, it's a very complex logistical process. And I'm sure she's applied a lot of chemistry principles in managing the supply chain of these organizations. You've got Joey Ruela Pabalan, J&J Solvay, Nacario and Completo, both UPLB chemistry professors, right? Gene Lansigan, an entrepreneur in his own right, and also works for Akzo Nobel in the United States. You've got Ray, who organized this conference. You know, Boringer Sales is now an entrepreneur. He's got his own events organization and has adapted well to the needs during COVID times. You've got Art Malyari, who I used to work with in San Miguel Brewing Group, who's now a senior manager in different plants. Rene Jocares and Drew Tangonan, both analytical lab managers. One is in Australia, one is in the US. Gloria Gamat, who's now in media and in journalism. So you've got, it just shows you the breadth of careers that you guys can look forward to when you take chemistry, right? So just my last slide. So just critical considerations. Chemistry is, I think, I'm biased, but I think it's a good technical foundation and a good work-life philosophy, even at home, right? Even when you're choosing your life partner, you gotta have good chemistry, right? And preparation and planning are key to having good career options. Like Joey said, you couldn't really plan where you don't know where you're gonna end up, right? But if you prepare well and you plan well, you anticipate when the options come in, you get lucky because you're prepared, right? So thank you for listening. I would love to take your questions in a little bit, and I'm gonna turn it over now to Lani.
Thank you, Gani, for the very enlightening presentation. I'm also glad that you mentioned the periodic table. We recognize that it is central in the chemistry world. So that is the other project that we are working on. So now we invite back Joey so that we can answer the questions that were raised. Okay. So I have several questions here, okay, here and there, all over the place. Okay. So the first one is for Joey. You mentioned about chemistry teaching in colleges and universities. How about high school? Can BS chemistry graduates teach chemistry and other sciences in the high school level?
All right. Thank you, Lani, for that question. Actually, yes, the answer is a big yes, but it's a little bit complicated when we are going to high school and elementary, lower than the university setting. It's because, for example, in the Philippines, before you can teach in high school, maybe in a government high school, you need to be qualified. And so aside from your BS Chem or chemistry related BS degree, then I think you need to take an exam, maybe a second exam for secondary school teachers. And so once you are qualified, definitely you're in the best position to teach chemistry in high school. So the answer is yes, but I think you need to have an additional qualification to teach in high school. But normally in university, like instructor, the entry level is just bachelor's degree and you'll be fine. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. This one is for Gani. Okay, so you've gone through the different ranks. Okay, what is the ideal colleague or teammate or employee or boss?
So there's four different types of employees that we kind of get, right? There's the smart and diligent guy, does hard work, and there's the smart but a little bit lazy, on the lazy side. Then you've got the not so smart, not so competent, but lazy also, and you'll have the not so smart but diligent, right? And if you're looking at those choices, the worst one would be not so smart and lazy, right? But it's not actually it. The worst one, I would think, to really get, that's why you have to be very particular when you interview people, is the not so smart one, but the hardworking one. Because those are the ones that will do a lot of bad work and you have to fix them afterwards, right? So that's one thing. The other one is what I call the tilapia story. It's gonna take like 1 minute. So there's these two guys, right? And they're saying, boss, how come I got promoted and this guy who just came, Joey, Joey just started, a year ago and he got promoted, right? How come me, Gani, didn't get promoted as fast as he did? And so the boss goes, see that tilapia guy who's selling, see that cart? Why don't you go, Gani, see what he's selling? So Gani runs. And the guy goes, he comes back, right? Gani comes back. He said, "Sir, they're selling tilapia. Okay, ask them how much." So Gani runs again. How much? How much? And then he goes back. "Sir, it's 100 pesos per kilo." Okay, go back again and ask him where they're gonna sell it. So he goes back again. Tells him they're gonna go to the next town and sell it, right? And then so he goes, "Joey, why don't you go ask that guy what he's selling?" And so Joey goes. And then Joey comes back and says, "Sir, he's selling tilapia. And he's selling it at 100 pesos per kilo. And he's going to sell it in the next town." And I asked him, "Why don't you just drop it off here? I'll get it from you for 70 pesos, right? You don't have to travel. And then we'll sell it here." Right? That's the employee that we want. Hindi yung isang utos, isang sagot. Pero yung may initiative. The one that has an initiative to find out and solve problems and figure out what needs to be done. And our job as leaders is to give them a safe space so they can explore it, right? The same way that we manage labs, same way probably that Dr. Joey manages his postdocs and his lab team, And that's what they teach us at UPLB. Kailangan maabilidad ka, hindi yung isang utos, isang sagot. Yun.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now I have two questions here for both of you. They're similar. Okay, they came from two participants. Okay, for Joey, okay, the question is, what is the greatest challenge that you encountered as an academic? And I have a similar question for Gani. What are the biggest challenges you face in the industry? Okay, so let's start with you, Joey.
All right, so challenge. Remember, if you recall my talk, it's about there are two essential elements for a rewarding career. So I always consider rewarding instead of a successful, because as I said, there are many ways people measure success, right? And so rewarding is something very personal, right? And so I mentioned qualification and inspiration. All right. So the challenge that I had, the biggest challenge that I had, as if you remember, it was very painful when I resigned from my job at UPLB to go to Japan. Yes, that's right, to go to Japan. And that challenge is, to look after my inspiration. So I actually mentioned that it's primarily economic reason why I have to move from the Philippines to the other country to provide a better future for my family, for my inspiration. So that's the greatest challenge I faced during my entire career. All right.
Gani?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think from a personal point of view, the biggest challenge that I've faced is learning to accept that you don't know everything, right? And if anything that you get from getting an advanced graduate degree is that you do not know everything. And it took me a while. It took me a while to realize that. And I realized that through a lot of friends, like sila James, sila Joey Pabalan, who I've had conversations with, and some of them heated ones. And I, I started to realize that, that's when you start, getting inputs from other people because you don't know everything, and just really learning learning along the way, learning continuously. The next one that I like to talk about, sorry, this is long, is really the biggest challenge here in the Philippines, right? So if you guys look at a graph, right, a graph that has the number of scientists per million people, and if you look at the bottom of the x-axis is the different countries. And if you look at the Philippines has less than 200 scientists per million people. And if you look at the other neighbors that we have in Southeast Asia, like Malaysia has 3,000. Singapore has 6,000. Europe, United States, they're in the 6,000 range. So we're really, really behind. And when I try to do R&D here, it's very, very difficult because we don't have enough talent. Right? We don't have enough talent. I'd like to have somebody to debate with because that's the foundation of evolving science, right? But right now at Pascual, I'm the only guy with the advanced graduate degree, and that's really sad. And it's sad to get people here because of the economic reasons that Joey was just talking about. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on. And it's I feel like I'm hitting my head on a cement every time I do it. But I try. We try our best, and we suck less and less, right, every day. And that's one of the biggest challenges in the Philippines. So I am trying to inspire all the folks here who are trying to
Mhm.
get a chemistry degree or figure out what they want to do in college. Let's try to help each other figure out how we can get more R&D talent here and influence, elect the right people so they can do the right laws, right, to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's one for Joey. Thanks for making the distinction between a successful and rewarding career. Now, if you rank the many rewards that you derive from your career as a faculty member, what would be your top two?
All right. So I use the word reward. All right. Uh, maybe okay. Top two. All right. Maybe the very first one, reward, that I can still, vividly remember, is the moment I joined UPLB Institute of Chemistry. Remember, I came from a very poor family. I didn't have the capacity to study university, and let alone to do my PhD. And so when I joined UPLB, it actually opened the my career path to many possibilities. And one of the best thing that happened to me, and I call it the best reward I have, is because of my joining UPLB. I was sent to Australia to do my PhD. So it is, the reward is I manage beyond, despite having no capacity to do my PhD, I managed to do my PhD through Institute of Chemistry. So that's the reward I have. And because of that PhD, then the rest happened. So the rest of my career is actually dependent on that one. But of course, along the way, I have to somehow make it more flexible. I have to consider many factors. And so that's number one reward for me to be able to pursue my PhD, and that is through my joining the UPLB Institute of Chemistry. And the second one is probably when I decided to come to Brunei. That's why I stayed longer in Brunei. And I mentioned that my stay in Brunei is the best in my entire career, because Brunei is a very different country. It's unique. You should visit me here and have a look for yourself. We are very taken care of by the government of Brunei, and we are living very comfortably. The university is very good, providing us with everything we need. And so the best, for me, the best in my in the reward, the best reward is not only me but also my family. So my whole family is here in Brunei, and we are actually being rewarded, because of this career in chemistry that brought me from UPLB to Brunei. So these are the two. Probably I answered the question. So the first one is joining UPLB, and the second one is coming to Brunei.
Okay, thank you, Joey. Now for Gani, as a manager or leader, any advice on how to navigate the differences in the organizational structures and behavior and practices, etc., between the Philippines and abroad? So you've experienced both, okay, worlds. Any advice?
Yeah. So uh, when I went home in 2011, that was a big culture shock because I spent most of my uh, growing up in the US, basically. So my professional career and all my training, right, were in the US. And the US folks are very direct and very professional, right? And when I came over to the Philippines, it was a culture shock because people are more on the passive aggressive side. They're not very direct. They don't really talk to you directly about problems, and when you talk to them directly about problems, so you have to take a very different approach here. and we're full of paradoxes, right? Um, um, you know, your Lola will tell you that you're fat when the first time she sees you, but you know they don't. But that's just it, right? But people won't tell you any other direct things except that, hey, you're fat. You're fatter than before, right? That's like a normal greeting, right? So when you're trying to navigate the Philippine professional organizations, you really have to. The techniques that I've learned is one, I have to hire the right people. So one of the first things that I did when I came here was went through different universities and did a hiring talk. And a lot of my folks that I've hired in those hiring talks have really helped me out. You know, so that selection of talent is really key because that will help you form the organization that you need. And now that's one of my greatest rewards is seeing these people that we've hired and doing so well with their careers. And the second one is when you hire these people, you got to provide them a safe space, like I was talking about earlier, to explore their edges. So if they need to fail here, just provide them a safe space for them to explore that. And that'll allow them to figure out what they need to do and reach their potential. So I think those are the two approaches that works well in both sides, whether you're in the US or you're in the Philippines. It's just hiring the right people and allowing them,
Mhm.
giving them the space to grow. And by doing that, you'll do well, right? Because you can do other things. If you hire somebody that's better than you, that's good too, because then you get better arguments and you can do other things. You can move on to other things. You can do other things and spend more energy in those things for your career. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, both of you can answer this. Okay, although you're one is in the industry, one is in the academe. Any thoughts on how to make Philippine academia attractive to chemistry graduates, especially if you are foreign trained? So Gani, you came back. Although you didn't go back to academia, you came back. Okay? And Joey, you also came back and then left.
Then go again.
You should start, Joey.
All right. I think we have to look at the reason why people are living or going abroad. You know, and I think one of the obvious reasons is for greener pasture, because we have more opportunities, higher salary abroad, right? So if we are foreign trained, we normally, get this idea, especially if we are trained in the country where we are working right now. So we are very familiar with the system in that country. So we normally end up working in that country also. So for example, you did your PhD in the USA, then normally you end up working in a laboratory or in a university in the USA or in Australia and so on. So it's because they provide you with a attractive package. So I think one, to attract chemists to consider the Philippines is probably for the universities and first and foremost for the government to make the chemistry career in the Philippines attractive by probably raising the salary or giving more benefits. But I think the Philippines is doing, some good initiatives. For example, the Balik Scientist program, it actually attracts a lot of Filipino scientists overseas to go back to the Philippines. So I think just make it attractive. That's the keyword that I can share. Okay, back to you, Gani.
Yeah. So that's I'm gonna jump off from that statement. You know, when we were talking about the number of scientists earlier, right? There's 200 per million in the Philippines, and there's, let's just say, 3,000 in Malaysia, right? Uh, this is not funny, so you guys have to take this seriously, right? Um, for us to catch up with Malaysia, and that means we're gonna call Malaysia and say, "Hey guys, we're gonna try to catch up with you. Can you stay at 3,000 for a while until we catch up?" Right? We're gonna assume that's the situation, right? To make it the situation less funny. So it'll take us 10,000 scientists. We need to produce 10,000 scientists for the next 25 years to catch up to a 3,000 scientists per million level. 10,000 scientists in the next 25 years. The Balik Scientist program that Joey's talking about does not reach 10,000 scientists per year. It does not even reach 1,000. Good luck if it reaches 100. Long term. So you need long term, right? So it needs to be a wholesale change on how we approach this. It's like when you're racing, right? When you're trying to catch up with somebody, you don't run in the same pace. You know, you have to run at a faster pace. And that's, I think, that sense of urgency is the lack of the sense of urgency, Lani, is what worries me. Because I don't see any initiatives that would get us up to the 10,000 per year for the next 25 years. And we don't want to wait 25 years, right? Let's just do it in 5 years. But that means you need more scientists per year. So there needs to be, like just what Joey was saying. One, how do we attract them here? We need to give them the tools so that they can survive, right? And survive and not pick, medicine versus eating 3 times a day, right? They don't have to be rich. Scientists are not geared towards that, right? They just want to do science, right? So the next thing we do is give them the tools that they need so they can do their work. The Balik scientist, the Ph.D. Balik scientist or Balik Ph.D. program of UP is 2 million pesos. That doesn't even scratch the surface when you're trying to recruit somebody. You spend that on 2 bottles of acetonitrile that will come next year in 2 years, and then a couple of RAs, right? But you need 10 million at least, 10 million to attract these people here because they still have to fix their hood, yeah. And so some of those things, right, that it needs to really happen wholesale. And we're trying to work. There's a bunch of people here that are trying to work with the legislative branch to get that to happen. And I encourage everybody who have any ideas and connections with our senators and our House of Representatives to help us out and tell them, hey, this is not cool. This needs to be happening quick. And you see the evidence of this lack of talent in our approach for COVID-19, right? It's just, yeah. So I'm gonna stop there because we're gonna spend more time. We probably need to spend this somewhere else. But those are the 2 things that I would focus on: is getting them at a right compensation level, and 2, giving them the tools, right, to do their job so they can do science, right? That's it.
Thank you. We might have 2 more questions. Okay. So this is for Joey. How has widespread internet access and usage affected the ways your students learn and interact with you?
Can you say it again, please?
How has widespread internet access and usage affected the ways your students learn and interact with you?
All right. Actually, there are advantages and disadvantages, because of this high internet availability, particularly Googling, So mostly all information are available through Google. That's why I mentioned that, I'm not going to tell you something that you can Google because everyone now can Google. Even, if they Google the question in my exam or in my test, they can actually get the answer from the internet by just Googling the keywords. So as I said, there are advantages and disadvantages. So one disadvantage is because of the availability of this information of the internet, it's very easy to use the internet now. And then the advantage for the students is they can easily get answers to these exam questions, assignments, and reports. Okay. Now the disadvantage on my part is because it's very challenging now for me to give a question that they cannot Google.
They cannot Google.
Yeah. So I make sure if I give online exams, I make sure that the questions cannot be Googled. And I think one effective way of doing that is give them calculations. You explain to them how to calculate this. Giving them a scenario wherein they need to apply their chemistry knowledge and they have to calculate something or do something that no matter how they Google, they cannot answer unless they understand the concept. And I'm lucky because in my subject, analytical chemistry, normally it's a lot of calculations. So that's why it's very easy for me to come up with questions that cannot be Googled. But I can imagine, those questions that are like identification question or enumeration. What are the allotropes of carbon? You just say Google, what are the allotropes of carbon? Diamond, charcoal, and so on, graphite. But if I ask questions like that, and then there's no point because students can easily answer that unless it's a close book question, no internet allowed, and then the students need to store them in their brains. But for internet, online questions, then we have to design questions that cannot be Googled. Yeah. So as I said, there are advantages and disadvantages, and it affects the student in a variety of ways, and including the lecturers as well or the instructors. But the point there is we have to be aware that everything now can be Googled. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all for now.
This
We
is
can go on and on, but I think everybody understands that. Everybody Googles.
yes. Okay. This we still have several questions, but this will be we have a time limitation. This will be our last question. Okay, for both of you. What do you think UPLB taught you that made you successful in your respective careers?
Oh.
Yeah. Ganun.
Para siyang
Gani?
Ang dami nun.
Thank you for that question.
In LB, in UP in general, there's just you meet people in different backgrounds, right? And I think just from that diversity of ideas and diversity of backgrounds, it teaches you a lot about life, about how non-binary it is. So that's, I think, from a personal perspective, just from a maturing perspective, I think that probably that's the biggest contribution of being in UPLB. Physical wise, LB is just a nice place. It's a nice place. It's a nice place to hang out and raise a family, right? And meet friends. And, it's just a nice place. It's 4,000 hectares, right, of mountains. And then another 1,000 hectares of just campus. So it's a really nice, it's a conducive place to explore your edges, right? From UPLB chemistry, I just had great teachers like Lani and Joey. So, I mean, it's really a testament to that.
Thank you. Joey, anything to add?
I guess it's my turn now. Actually, I learned most of the lessons in life that I'm applying now, particularly with regards to my career. I learned from UPLB. So UPLB is my eye opener. Before I joined UPLB, I came from barangay in Atimonan, Quezon. We didn't have electricity. So you just imagine, during my high school, wala kaming kuryente, no electricity. So I had no exposure to many things. No TV, no nothing except comics, of course. So kilala ko si Zuma, si Galema. Anyway, when I joined UPLB, I was so naive, in the real sense of the word naive. I was joining Pictionary. I didn't know how these words can be acted because I am not familiar with those words. I didn't know the cartoon characters. I didn't know Superman. I didn't know Popeye. And then every time my dorm mates are talking about all this that they watch on TV, I was totally lost. And so the greatest lesson I learned from UPLB is it's an eye-opener, almost everything. So an entirely new life came to me when I joined UPLB. Chemistry particularly, because I was there all the time. So I think that's the best thing that happened to me in UPLB. Is it's an eye opener. I learned from other people, from my friends, that there are other world, not just the world that I grew up in my village, in my barangay Malinaw, Ilaya. All right.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we thank our speakers. Okay, this has been a very remarkable session. We thank our attendees.
It's an
Now,
honor.
if you have further questions, okay, to the organizers, or you would like to get in touch with any of the speakers, okay, this is the email address that you can get. Now, we would like to mention that we were able to answer the questions that were raised in our first webinar series on COVID. Okay, so get in touch with us using this email address. Now, before we close, okay, we would like to acknowledge another ChemSoc alumnus, Mr. Rey Espiritu, and his team from MEDConcept Solutions, or MEDConcept, for allowing us to use his platform to broadcast this webinar and for managing the technical aspect of our webinar. So thank you, Rey, and thank you, MEDConcept. Now I would like to call on Mr. Rene Jocares, all the way from Brisbane, Australia, to give us some announcements.
Hello, this is Rene from Brisbane, Australia. I would like to thank you for joining us on the second set of the Elementa Project webinar series. This is a series of talks about career orientation, career pathways for chem students, fresh graduates, aspiring, and current chemists. We hope you have gained an insight into the career path of some of UPLB's finest chemistry graduates. We would like to thank our speakers today, Dr. Joey Santos, Dr. Isagani Padolina, or Joey and Gani actually, as friends call them. Their contribution to this seminar is profoundly appreciated, and an interesting note actually that both Joey and I went to Australia in the same year. Joey did his PhD in La Trobe in Melbourne, while I managed a mass spec lab in Brisbane, and I'm still here. Call that career path divergence. Anyway, I would like to thank Rey, who happens to be also a chemist, and his team at MEDConcept for facilitating this seminar series. Our next webinar session will be in 2 weeks' time. That's Saturday, the 6th of February. It will be more career pathways for students in the industry and academe, to be presented by Dr. Earl Ada and Dr. Ruela Talinting. Everyone from student to recent graduates are most welcome. Even if you're already practicing chemist, you're more than welcome to attend. Thank you for all your support, and we look forward to seeing you again next sessions. Stay safe, everyone, and have a good weekend.
Ending webinar broadcast in 3, 2, 1.